This episode brought to you by Nomadic Research, built for the wild and forged in adversity. Somewhere between the front lines and the firelight, a vision was born. The founders of Nomadic Research spent years in the harshest environments on Earth, where grit and resilience weren't just words, but a way of life. They saw a need for gear that could handle anything, gear that wasn't just built, but built to last. From battlefields to backcountry trails, every piece of Nomadic Research gear is designed with one mission: unyielding performance for those who refuse to quit. The founders believe in patriotism, personal responsibility, and the freedom of the great outdoors, because adventure isn't just a weekend escape, it's a way of life. Born in the heart of Afghanistan, forged in adversity, and built for the wild, Nomadic Research is gear for those who go further. You can start your adventure at nomadicresearch.com. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the DTD podcast, Dynamic Tales Delivered. This week in the studio, what does it take to survive 5 hell weeks, lead Navy SEALs into the unknown for 22 years, and then rebuild your life when the uniform comes off? This week's guest is a man who's been told he'd never make it, pushed to the brink of physical and mental breakdown, and emerged as a relentless force for leadership and resilience. From the brutal crucible of buds to near loss on the home front, his journey's a masterclass in grit, brotherhood, and rebuilding purpose after the war. Get ready to hear the story of a SEAL who never stopped fighting for his teammates, his family, and himself. Please welcome Sean Murphy. What's going on, my friend?
I don't know a whole lot. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, man. AJ put us together. So that guy is a wild man. He is absolutely hilarious. I was so happy to have him on. And then as soon as he was done, he said, man, you got to get my buddy on here and let him tell his story. He got a pretty amazing one. And you do. When I talk about the grit in the opening and everything, it's true. To do 5 of those things. And, you know, usually we don't talk about buds, but I think it's definitely going to have to come up in this discussion just because of how many times you did it. But let's kind of start back in the day and talk about your childhood. Do you think that there was a defining moment or anything that kind of set you on this path of service that you've had?
Not particularly, because I guess now reflecting back on it, I didn't really think at the time going through my childhood it was any different than anyone else out there. I was just kind of living my life the way that I could with what I had. So I don't think there was really a defining moment. I just think all the series of events add into kind of the character that makes you uniquely you. Even though it maybe we're all extremely different, but at the same time, I didn't feel any different. I still don't feel any different. It was just the circumstances I was given. So there's no real defining moment that I can say that this is what made me a Navy SEAL. I think it takes a collective of all the things that I went through that put me in the position to persevere through adversity.
Well, let's kind of talk about some of that stuff that you didn't think was different. I don't think your story's different from a lot of guys that are on the show, but I definitely think it's different from the norm. And what's interesting is the guys always say, I really didn't know much. You'll have a guy that's extremely poor that they hunt for their food for the winter and stuff like that. And they'll be like, yeah, I thought everyone did it at the time. So let's kind of talk about those moments when you were growing up that you don't think are different, but I think it does set you apart a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how far back do you want to go? There's so many different things that I look back on now and say, with 5 boys and a single mother household, there's a lot that we did that was probably not, but that we experienced that was not the norm.
Right. You wrote in your thing to me that you mostly grew up poor. I think that's how you put it. I was mostly poor.
Money poor, but experience rich.
Right. So let's first off talk about your mom, because later on I read an article that you wrote about that you need someone to be a Navy SEAL mom. So let's kind of drill down on her and walk me through just kind of what an influence she had on your life.
Well, early on, she was the only person really that we had contact with as a parent figure, because my parents split when I was, I think, around 9. And for her, she was, I I can only imagine now that I have kids and I'm an adult, but what she was going through, trying to make ends meet. She was going back to school to get her nursing degree, and then just trying to, keep five boys that were extremely wild alive. And so I saw that as she was going through school, studying all the time. When she was home, she was cooking and then studying, and then trying to keep a head count of all five of us and where we were and what injuries we had and what we were getting into that we shouldn't have been. And that I see as, no matter how bad things seem, you have to keep going. And that's something that I think that all of us as five boys started to pick up on is you got to keep taking one step in front of the other. Just because things are not going the right way does not mean that you give up. That's actually when you have to dig in and find what you need to push forward. And so she did a great job of that, even though for some reason she kept her sanity. I think that most people would lose their sanity, and it caused for some really good experiences because whenever she would go to school and go to work, she was working, going to school, and all that stuff. That we would just basically, and times are vastly different now than when we were growing up. We could just run outside, live down the country, and just disappear. And so, not having the father figure in the household, even though my father was still in the picture, he was up in Arkansas, where I still live today, where he lives today, and I live now. So he was 2 hours away, and so the father figures that we had were from best friends, and just people that we came in contact with. And even though my mother would show us the caring and kindness and help us stumble through this lifestyle, she still kept going, and it caused us to have some. Like I said, we were extremely poor financially. The church was taking care of us. We're on government food stamps, and we had government cheese and peanut butter and powdered milk and whatever else that we got. So she made do with what we had. We didn't look at it as scoffing at the things that were not nice. We actually had a cool experience, learning how to be creative and innovative with what you had to make the best of it. And so that's something I saw early as a child that she provided for us, even though the circumstances called for that. And that's something I still use today, and I want my kids to understand quite well.
Well, and you mentioned you step outside and you can just disappear. That's how it was when we grew up was, and I think that is a good thing because I think that led to a lot of individuality with our generation. Um, Learning to like you said, use what you had available. And I think that a lot of people, including myself, didn't understand growing up. I mean, you see it because there was teasing and stuff back then about when you were the poor kid in school, but I think that when I really started noticing it was like when you get in the military and you start making, I guess, real money for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
which it's not saying a lot, but you're making money and you see that you can buy these things. I remember that I bought a pair of Jordans when I joined the army when I went active duty because I'd always wanted a pair and they were the worst shoes I ever bought in
Yeah.
my life. But that's when you start to notice it. Do you think when you started to notice that, man, we grew up kind of rough and we just didn't realize it at the time?
I think it wasn't until probably a couple of years in the military, because now that I look at it, when you first join the military, you're still poor. Like
Yeah.
you actually, like I did, to your point of getting that first paycheck worth money. I think mine was like $500 or $600. That very first one that you got, and I was just like, oh my goodness, I have so much money. Because before I had a bunch of jobs growing up, but it wasn't that much money. It wasn't like a consistent income that you could rely on. And this was like, I get this every 2 weeks. Wow. And so I was kind of overwhelmed by that. And then whenever I had to, like, I got my own place, because early on in the military, you're in the barracks. Then when I started to had to pay rent and all those other things, and I could afford a different lifestyle than what I was accustomed to growing up, that's when I said, oh wow, this is how people normally live. I lived completely different. So that's about 2 to 3 years in is when I noticed I could think back on my childhood, not negatively, just from a different perspective to say this is unique in the way that I was living as a child. I don't want to say it was like for me, I would never want somebody to say, "Oh, poor that kid was poor," have sympathy. It's more of I look at it as like I loved it. I would live it all over again because of the crazy stories that I have from just making do with what you have, and that I think carries over of appreciating the things that you do have to be resourceful, to make the best outcome because you're not defined by that poor childhood or um, the the circumstances that you're given while growing up. It's even though society does try to pinhole you. Now that I reflect back on when I have a way to make a living and provide, I'm not defined by what I was as a child. It actually is part of me, but it doesn't force me into the society's, I guess, path that you could fall victim to if not careful. But going through about 3 years is when I could stop and reflect and say, "Wow, I was a poor kid," but it didn't make me feel sorry for myself. It actually makes me laugh seeing how I had the opportunities that I did to do some pretty cool stuff without having to, rely on money.
Now, you had a couple brothers join the Navy too, correct?
Yes, I did.
How
One of
many
them.
total joined?
There's three that joined the Navy, all younger than me because I'm the second in line.
Okay.
Three of them had joined the Navy.
Okay. Um, did any of them, because it's interesting, out of the five, you have three join the Navy. Did the other two join any kind of service?
So my older brother, he did not. And then my younger brother, Michael, he joined the Navy. Then Ryan joined the Navy and Chris joined the Navy as well.
Okay. So you got four out of the five. And do you think with the way you grew up, do you think that you were looking for, whenever you all join in that service, do you think that you guys were looking for kind of another thing to kind of push who you were, or to kind of show who you were, because you grew up with, like your friends' dads as the father figures and stuff? Do you think you were looking to prove something when you all joined? Because it's interesting, four out of the five do it.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if we're looking to prove something. I think it was more of who are we and how are we going to be accepted into society? Because growing up the way that we did, there was no clear path. We didn't have the father figure saying, even though my dad, he went and worked for Walmart in the corporate office. And so for us, we didn't see that every single day. And it wasn't something that we could see and understand that lifestyle. So for me, I can't speak for my brothers. I was looking for just how to be part of a team. I was very centered on, uh, the people that you grow up with. They're like your family just because of the circumstances I grew up in. And now I see how we work today. The people that you work with, the people that you in your inner circle, that is family. That is a lot of what you absorb. It's how your paradigm gets established and shifts. So I looked at what am I going to do with my life? I was completely lost. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I knew that I wanted to be in some form of team dynamic. Because I actually did go to college, and I followed my best friend there to play football. And from there, I studied criminal justice because I respected the uniform and wanted to jump into law enforcement. Um, but I didn't feel the team that I really wanted deep down inside, and that's what led me to Army ROTC, and then I really enjoyed that, and then ultimately into the Navy. So I don't think that there was like trying to prove something. It was more of seeking out where do I fit in, because coming from a broken home with four brothers that we fought all the time, but we loved each other, and then not having uh, the the path laid out for us, trying to find that was just incredibly challenging to figure out where am I going to go, what am I going to do, and I think that's common among everyone. Is that when you get to a certain age, you want to get away from home as much as possible to go discover who you are and be independent. And that's kind of where I was, is how do I fit into society? Where am I going to go now that I'm detached from being reliant on the household that I lived in? I got to go establish my own. Well, how do I do that? And that's kind of where I led to wandering. All right, I'm gonna go to college, and then college is going to give me the answer, but it didn't. College does not give answers. It gives you tools to go make those decisions, and that's ultimately where I led into the military, was allowing them to give me more of the answers to help have a structured path to be on.
So, where did you end up going to college?
Missouri Western State College, and now I think it went from a state college to a university. It was in St. Joseph, Missouri, which was an amazing time. I really enjoyed going to college up there.
Right. And you said you played ball up there too, correct?
Yeah, I was a walk on. I did 2 years. I redshirted, and then because I did the scout team for the first year, and I loved it. I loved just getting my butt kicked up there. Just with it, maybe there's a slim chance that I could get some playing time. I was all in because I loved the team. I loved everybody on that team. There were amazing people from all over the United States, and I got to meet some really incredible people and go in the trenches with them. Go battle on whether it's practice or sitting on the sidelines and cheering them on. And then I finally got into the game, which was the defining moment for me. That's why I put in all that effort, because the scout team, we are the people that they basically prep for the game, and having us come in there to do that was really nice for me to experience, to show a little bit of humility on, just because you're on the football team does not mean that you're going to end up being the star, because everyone contributes in some way to the success of the team. And that was important to me to be a part of that, because that team feeling of coming in, maybe you're the star of the team, maybe you're not, maybe you're the guy that like I was, that would get beat up to make other people better. And so I really enjoyed that while I was on the team.
Don't you think that's a common theme in your life, though, getting beat up to possibly achieve greatness? I really do think that that's a common theme in your life, is you'll do whatever it takes to maybe get that 5 seconds of greatness. Would you agree with that?
100%. So when I was going through buds, not to jump into that, but that was a time that I started to think, why not me? Why not me? If somebody else can do it, if there's the sliver of a chance, that means that I can't. Everything else that works against you, saying that you can't, is going to close that slim chance for you. But if that slim chance is what you focus on, that it's possible, then that is what drives me to find success. And success isn't just me absorbing glory, it's more of our team. That if we succeed, then that is success. And that's how I see that. If I can contribute in some way, shape, or form to, like you said, getting beat up, I I will endure that, because that's what it takes. Nothing comes easy. Some things do for talent, but eventually you run into hard times, and that's what separates the the good from the great, in my opinion, is being able to persevere through those times where you are getting beat up, and that is the challenge that maybe you've never experienced. And the more you get comfortable being uncomfortable in that position, the more you'll find success in that.
So, how do we realize, like, how does your college career kind of come to a finality for you?
Oh, wow. So I realized that I'm not going to be able to afford college. I saw it right away. I wasn't making any money. I was actually working at an Applebee's, trying to make ends meet for college. My father was actually taking out loans to support me going to college, and he was like, "Hey," eventually he's like, "I can't keep this up," and I wasn't, making enough money, and so I joined Army ROTC with the intent of going into the Army. And there was there was these Ranger Challenge I was in, that I was out.
My daughter is part of that team for her university.
It's amazing. I love the way they set those things up, and I was having a blast. Well, there was one, I think I might have been up at Fort Leavenworth. I can't remember exactly which one we were at, and I saw one of the battalion commanders. Maybe it was, I can't really remember, but there was an officer that was in charge, and the way that he was talking to people, I didn't really like. I said, It made me stop and think. They were NCOs, and they were the uh I forgot what they're called. I'm drawing a blank here, but the people about to go into officer candidate school. And what I saw from that is that it made me feel like that doesn't seem like it's a good team. And it may have just been like him having a bad day, talking very poorly, but it stuck with me. It said, I don't need to be a part of that. I'm going to find something different. So I walked down to and that's when I had made the decision. I'm going to join the military. I'm not going to stick around and try and pretend that I'm going to the NFL, playing scout football, because no one's going to even give me I could be the water boy and they still wouldn't want to have me come on the team. But so I decided to join the Navy because I had just walked down to the recruiting office. I was going to go into the Marines because in my mind, the Marines were the pinnacle. Like, that's who the big, bad, tough guys were. And every time that they showed the commercial, the uniform was extremely sharp. And so I loved that. And I was like, I want people to see me that way. And went down there. The Marine Corps recruiting depot was closed. Probably the only time that they were closed. But then the Navy's, the two doors right next to each other. So I just grabbed the Navy doors and it opened. And I asked them and said, hey, I'm looking for, a team dynamic. Kind of gave them the whole spiel of, I want to be part of a team. That's what I want. I think they may have asked me if the Marine Corps guys were around, and they kind of chuckled. But that's started me down the path of getting out of college, and I finished the semester, and then because I went in delayed entry, and then went into the Navy about 7 months after that day.
So I got to ask you, and I'm going to ask you a couple different times during the conversation.
Okay.
I want to know how you saw yourself at that age and how you perceived other people saw you at that age.
That's a good question. I saw myself as an outcast, and growing up, there was, I felt different than other people by the way that they would look at me and treat me. The way that I say that is not to say they were demeaning to me, but it was more of, I was the poor kid, so it was easy to make fun of. So I had to have a sense of humor, for one, because I got made fun of for being a poor kid. Had long, shaggy hair. Believe it or not, I actually had long hair that could get dirty at one point in my life. And so that carried through and into college. I was a little bit more excited about making something of myself. So feeling like an outcast, like I just didn't belong at that point, I felt that. I felt that I was not part of the team or part of the atmosphere that was buzzing. And so that to me was kind of how I went into college and stayed a little bit in college, and it transitioned a little bit to where I felt a little bit more secure or empowered. How I felt other people saw me, I don't know. I didn't really care what other people think because I got used to that eventually, but I felt like an outcast. So I guess those two things kind of uh, tying together to where some may have viewed me as not belonging, kind of the way that I viewed myself as I don't really belong. Um, but I never really cared too much about what other people thought.
So seeing yourself as an outcast, do you think that's why you work so hard to be part of those teams? Like you said, you played scout team, you got beat up just to make other people better. Is it because in your mind you're an outcast and you'll do anything to be part of that team?
That's a possibility. Yeah, it could be because I was striving that, one, if you don't recognize the work that I'm capable of, I'll show you what I'm capable of.
I'll outwork you.
I'll outwork you. I'll just work myself until I've had enough, and that I haven't found that yet.
Right. All right. So you go in the Navy. What I know that you have to become a SEAL, you have to take certain rates in the Navy that will transfer over. So what did you decide to do when you went in?
The one job that I thought as a 19-year-old kid would be the best in the world, which is a gunner's mate, because I get to work on guns from anything from small arms all the way up to the 5-inch cannons on the ship. And I learned as much, like the way that they described the job to me, I thought I was going to go in and be a weapons expert, but really it was it's vastly different, but still, it was really cool that I took the gunner's mate rate and got to spend 6 months. The school's 6 months
That's
long.
what I was about to say. Yeah.
It's long. It was 6 months in Great Lakes, but it was I learned all about electronics, hydraulics, weapons handling, everything that made all the weapons work, which was really cool.
Well, but the 6 months that's a relatively short time compared to some of the other ones, correct?
Not necessarily. Well, I really don't know. I think the only one that would be longer. I really don't know. It's been so long. My goodness, this is I would be lying if I speculated on which one would be longer. I think Corpsman is a long school, but I know Gunner's Mate is pretty long. There's some that are a few weeks because once you get through the school, then you go straight into your command that you're going to, and that's where you have OJT, where you learn a lot of the skills. Then you have
Right.
C schools and follow on schools that you can get. But bottom line is you need to get into the job and start working and learning from those around you to on the path that's already established that you can um, uh, progress in the rank and the rate that you're in.
So, are you already on that path in the Navy when you're in boot camp and everything? Are you on that path to becoming a SEAL? Like they are, that's already in the
Yeah,
contracts and everything for you. So you're doing the extra PT and you're, I think they're the dive motivators and stuff. Are
yeah,
you with them,
yeah.
working out extra and stuff like that? Right.
Well, back in so you had that during boot camp. In boot
Okay.
camp, you have that when I went through, you have a SEAL contract, and when you get the SEAL contract, because you have to do the screening test even before you get that contract to pass everything. And I did by the grace of God. I don't know how I passed all that. Passed the test, and then they gave me my SEAL contract. And then while you go through boot camp, you're still going through regular boot camp, but you have to get up earlier and go to the dive motivators to do extra workout, and then make it back in time to rejoin your division in boot camp to go through regular boot camp. So it wasn't like you went a special boot camp. And then through GM school, gunner's mate school, that was where um, you basically had to do it on your own. They did, I think now I think they've changed it a few times. You've got like a special school that they go and train people. And it's a higher intensity for preparing you for buzz. But back in my day, you didn't have any of that. You literally went and did your gunner's mate school, and then any other free time because it was just like a regular school. Then you got your free time afterwards, still on base, living in barracks. So you had to go and make the effort. You had to make the initiative to stay in shape or actually getting out of Navy boot camp. I had to get back into shape to prepare myself for buds.
You think you took it as seriously while you're in gunner's mate school as you probably should have?
Yeah. Yes. And yeah, I was still young. So I wanted to go out and hang out and have a good time. But at the same time, I was pretty serious because it's what I wanted. Growing up with having nothing, and then now you have the opportunity to go get something that is held in high regard. I took that as like this is my oxygen. I need it, and I'm not going to sacrifice it. And so I did train quite a bit. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was going to do something. I was going to go run. I was going to swim. I was going to work out, get in the best shape that I could, and whatever else that the other people that were trying to go to Buzz as well, what they were doing, we were all coming up with our own ideas of how to stay in shape and what we should do to prepare ourselves for training.
I had a guy on the show that, in order to get in shape for it, he thought that he should run with sand in his UDTs. So he
Oh
used to
wow!
he used
Good
to
for him.
run to. He said that if he built himself up enough from that sand, that it would be no problem when he got to
Yeah.
Buds. So there's all different kinds of ways I've heard that people got ready for it. Once you get to Buds for the first time,
Mhm.
walk me through you what you're feeling when you step on that quarter deck, you're on the grinder. How are you feeling, man?
Well, it was nighttime when I got there. The flight came in at night, and so I came in. It was late. I was extremely exhausted, but it was exciting. I was thrilled and just in awe. Like I growing up, I never idolized anybody. Like I still to this day, I don't think of another human being as somebody I idolize. The only person that ever walked this planet is Jesus Christ that I idolize. Now, when I walked in that quarterdeck, I felt in awe that greatness comes through here, and I wanted to be a part of it. So I was sitting there in my dress whites with my little sea bag, and I just felt thrilled and excited just to be there. And it wasn't, I can't really put it into words, like the feeling of this presence of where you were that could make or break you, and that it has for many, many years turned average individuals into SEALs. And that was going to be their defining moment of who they were, based on whether or not they made it.
When you say that you never idolized anyone, but you were in awe, the first time you see one of these instructors come out, the first time they get at it with you still feel that awe, or are you like, oh shit, maybe I messed up coming here?
Well, I never said I felt like I messed up coming there, but it was exciting in a way of you're in a fight, and I know that I respect them, and they've proven themselves, and it's their job to make sure that not to make friends. You're not there to make friends. You're there to make SEALs. And that's what I felt, that it is my time to prove to them I can belong. I can do what you need me to do to be here. And I want that opportunity. So even though they came out like, honey badgers and just rabid dogs, it was still very impressive. Not that I'm addicted to somebody yelling at me, but at the same time, I felt that was where I started to feel that sense of purpose, that what I'm doing, they're helping us all get rid of the people that don't belong there. Not that anything bad about those people that didn't make it through, but those that are coming through that aren't going to achieve greatness through the lens of a SEAL, they're helping us, sharpen the people that need to be there. And that's kind of what I alluded to with being in awe, is that was something that I had been seeking, and I could feel it. Maybe it was self-induced, but I could feel that, from the presence of being in buds. And even those instructors were some that I'm still friends with, that they came out with, looks like lightning, and they could cast it anywhere, in thunder, that shaped us into who we are today.
You think you ever, because you said, growing up you felt like an outcast. Do you think you looked around at any of those people that were in buds with you and said that person doesn't belong here?
I did. I wasn't too judgmental, but there were some people, based on their character, I could tell that they don't belong, or at least in my eyes, that I viewed as they don't belong. But now I'm sure that people thought the same of me, because I was shorter. I was a little pit bull, and nobody really knows when you're going through training. You're all equal. You have no idea who's going to make it and who's not. And so the 5 stages of a team, you got forming. We were formed, and then we were storming. Everybody's trying to figure out where they belong. And eventually you just get so worn down, you're norming, and then everybody starts performing, and then you adjourn. We went through that almost every single day of the 5 stages of a team. And so it was interesting to see how that transpired, and where everybody kind of butted heads and probably cast judgment on each other.
You were in Eddie Gallagher's boat team, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
How about him back then?
Oh, he, I loved Eddie. He was funny. Because we're both the same height. We're in the Smurf crew. If there's times that we separate in different boat crews, we end up right back in the same boat crew, because you can't get away from your height,
Right.
But Eddie was aggressive, and I like that, because we were both kind of the same. There was a couple other people in our boat crew. We were very aggressive and no nonsense type of people. We had a great sense of humor. We could laugh and joke around, but at the time we put in a lot of work. And Eddie back then, I ended up being the boat crew leader for our boat crew, because eventually a lot of people had either dropped out or got rolled. And Eddie was in our boat crew, and we had one guy that we laughed about this when he had me on his podcast. And we laughed about this. So we're always like, pushing guys forward and helping them drive uh, further in the performance. And one guy kept falling asleep. And this is during Hell Week, and we had been awake for 5 days, and we're on the final stretch, before you get secured. And we're all tired and delirious. And um, I'm back there, I'm looking at everybody, and I'm steering the boat as they're paddling. And we start slowing down because this guy in front of us, he keeps like stopping his paddle with drag, and Eddie's like smacking the back. He's like, "Wake up, paddle!" And he's like, "I'm not sleeping. I'm stroking or rowing, whatever." And so we're going along. This is happening, and Eddie is just right on him. Like every time he falls asleep, Eddie's on him. Well, eventually, the guy falls asleep and falls into the water,
Oh shit.
and we're paddling around, and we had to grab him and pull him back in. But when he comes up out of the water, the first thing he says is like, "I wasn't asleep. I wasn't asleep." And everybody's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Yes, you were. You fell into the water. That's why we're going to pull you out of the water." And Eddie was just like letting him have it. And, I mean, we had been away for 5.5 days. So we ended up making, I think it was maybe a couple hundred more yards where we had to turn into the beach, and then we played games and they secured us. But that was, working with Eddie in Hell Week and Ender and Buzz was a lot of fun, just because we're a lot alike in some ways, where our aggressiveness, but also our ability to have a sense of humor as well, because that's what is there's a balance that's needed, and Eddie had that. So I liked Eddie a lot during Hell Week and Buzz.
So let's talk about the 5 times. I don't think we need to get into the details of it, but I think we need to talk about how you approached each successive Hell Week, but also what you're feeling in it, because your attitude has got to change by the 5th time. I mean, it's got to be. I don't even know how to describe it mentally, how you would do it, let alone physically. So let's talk about the first time you go into Hell Week and then what goes wrong.
First time in Hell Week, it was at this time, I think the 234 Discovery Channel Hell Week stuff was coming up. I hadn't seen any of that yet. And so I was completely blind to what I was getting myself into. I'd heard horror stories and we had seen the other crews, but other team or other classes go through, but they kind of shield you from that quite a bit. And you see it, and you see these grown men that are just getting crushed, and just how they look when they come out of Hell Week. They look different after Hell Week when they got their brown shirt on. They look a little rugged. And so going to the first one, it was, I think, ignorance truly is bliss in that moment. Ignorance was bliss, and I had a lot more energy for it. Well, as we got through the first couple of days, it was, I think, the second or third night. I can't really remember. The instructor had said us we were all on height lines, and I actually talked to one of the guys that was in this boat crew. They set us out in the surf zone and put a boat on our head and made us take seats, and then they gave us our MREs. Well, there was a tall guy that was like 6'3" in the front, and he was in a lot of pain. There's other guys in mixed height, and I'm one of the shortest guys. So when he hurt his neck and he fell down, and he fell forward, and he screamed, he's like, "Ah!" And so the way the boat came down on top of me, and it jacked my back up, and I remember feeling lightning go all the way through down my legs. And we're trying to hold it, and we're trying to eat at the same time, so nobody's really eating. And we go into these med checks, and when we go into med checks, this is where I learned that sometimes being honest is not the right answer. Well, I say that, I don't want that to come across the wrong way, but
No, I think you said it right.
yeah. Well, I walked in the med checks, and the doc that are very serious say, "Hey, are you experiencing any numbness, pain?" I was like, "Well, yeah." And I told him what happened. I was like, "Well, I felt this." And he was like, "Oh, we need to pull you and go get you some x-rays and this, that, and the other." I'm like, why? I mean, I walked in here, and so he's like, "No, just safety precaution." And in my mind, it felt not right, because I was like, okay, I'm seeing the other guys go back in, and I'm being put into a vehicle and taken over across the way to get an x-ray. And so by the time that they finally got someone in to give me an x-ray, come back over, and I was like, hey, I'm ready to go back in. They're like, and they'd already written up the paperwork. No, you're being enrolled because you've been out for too long. I think it was several hours, and they had already gone away. And so I was crushed. At that point, I was like, why am I being, in a way, I felt cheated that I was yanked out of something for being honest. And when they gave me the paperwork and said, no, you're going into the next class in 239, I said, all right, I guess that's what I have to do. And so I went, took a nap. The next day, I'm trying to figure out, okay, what's my path forward? And they said, you got to start over from day one. And the guys that were in what was called NDoc, it's the time it's really, you're just learning how to like live in buds. I had to go back into that, and being with them, I was kind of disappointed, but I was also happy that I'm still in it. I could still keep going. And it was different because now I knew exactly what I was going to get myself into. I knew I could do it. I knew the process and all the little things on how the class goes through each evolution, what to expect. And so I was a little bit more comfortable, still very disappointed because I saw the guys go through, and I really wanted to be with them. And they got their brown shirts, and I was now starting over from day one, week one.
So you go into the second one. We've kind of discussed that. You know what you're doing a little more. What goes wrong in that one?
That one, from what I remember, it was a winter class and it was much colder. It was extremely cold. Once I got all the way through up to Hell Week, I think it was, I can't remember which Hell Week it was that they put you in these tents out on the beach. And I think it might have been 239. It could have been 23. It happens in every class, but for whatever reason, we're sitting there, and I'm like, I'm just going to sleep and let them come wake us up. And so the there were guys that couldn't sit still, and they let their minds talk them into uh, that they couldn't do it. They're not doing anything. Like, you could sleep, you could do whatever. You're on the beach. They're going to come and bring chaos when the time it comes. But then they would leave the tent and quit because they had mentally checked themselves out. They had so much doubt that they couldn't do it because it was, I mean, cold leading up to it. Now you're going to go into 5.5 days. They just checked out. And that to me was very surprising. But then once we started, I can't remember why I got rolled in this one. Either VGE, or the puking and you can't keep anything down, or what was it? I think it was, oh no, I had bilateral hip stress fractures. I think that's where they discovered. And so again, they pulled me out because I couldn't walk. And so they rolled me out into the next class in 240. And that was the gut punch. That was, it felt horrendous that I'm now like, am I stuck in purgatory to where the Twilight Zone? I'm never going to get out of this Groundhog Day of going through it. And so it started bringing like, what am I doing? Well, in 240s I'm going through, we actually had a guy die on a run that we were on, that he just had a heart condition. And he was a SWIT guy, awesome dude, amazing guy. He was the class LPO, an excellent leader. And we're on a run, and he passed away. And then we go into Hell Week, and that's when I could not walk. I can't describe the feeling of my legs were locking up. I couldn't run. And that's when they pulled me back and said, hey, listen, you need time to go and heal. And at the time, I'm like, no, I want to keep going. They pulled me out and said, here's the deal. We can give you orders to do 95-45, which is law enforcement for the Navy. Go get healthy and come back. Because the way that you're going right now, you're going to end up getting an injury to where you'll be medically ineligible to come back to Buds. And so I agreed to it, said, okay, which I felt ashamed. I still to this day feel really ashamed that um, I didn't make it through 240 or 238 or 239. It just was this is who I am. This is what I need to do. And I felt ashamed that I wasn't there doing it, that I went and had to go do my time in the fleet and work my way back, which I was okay with. I could do that. But at the same time, I felt like that something had been taken away from me that if anybody's ever had that feeling of the air getting just pulled out of you and you just feel empty. I felt extremely empty and ashamed that I didn't make it through. I'm sure that a lot of people may feel that when they quit and don't make it through, but that's kind of how I felt, that I was robbed of this, um, that I put everything that I could, and that wasn't enough. It kept me from making it through, but there was still an opportunity, and that sliver of a chance to become a SEAL, I was holding on to that tightly, because everything else was just eroded from having to get pulled from the opportunity and say, hey, step away, go get healed, then come back, and then you can try and make it through.
So we're 3 in. Do you think that you ever thought to yourself that these people don't believe that you can do it?
100%. That's kind of when I get pulled aside. I remember that last conversation sitting in the classroom, the phase one classroom. I'm sure everybody that's been through buds knows what that is. It's these little chairs, these plastic chairs with little metal legs, and having the conversation with the instructor. And he was just kind of dismissive because they've got to get through so many people, and that feeling of like, you can't make it. Now, and I remember there's one guy that had made it through 239, that he had said something to me once he made it through. He's like, you know what, when you were a rollback and you were going through with us, I looked up to you because you'd been through all this. And now that I made it through, I see that you're not that big of a deal. And I was like, that's kind of rough. Like, I'm here. I was trying to help you, like, go through with you. And he said this, and he didn't, I don't think he meant it in like a bad way, but it kind of crushed me in a sense that, oh, okay, like you don't have faith and confidence in me because you've made it through. You're ahead of me now. Now you look down on me. Like, that's okay. Check. Got that. That's a little bit of motivator for me. Thank you for telling me your feelings and how you look at me now, but I'm going to continue to push forward, proving you wrong.
I
And
got to ask, did you ever run across that guy again?
um, no, I can remember his face. I'm sure that if I went through and sat down, I could probably pull out his name. Started with an S, I believe, his last name. But I'm pretty sure he went to the East Coast. But I think I probably ran into him. I can't remember. But that's one of the things that I could just flush down a toilet, and like I could see how he was not trying to be mean, but it was like a very
I got to disagree. I think he was probably trying to tell you that he was better than you.
probably. I mean, he was
Yeah.
probably very proud, which
Right.
good for him. But at the same time, like, dude, be humble, man. Like, I was trying to do my best. I'm still trying to do my best. If I make it through, you're still going to say the same thing. So I did feel like people didn't think that I was going to make it, which, um, in a way, it hurt, but it also fueled the fire to stick with it.
So let's talk fourth time. What happens?
Oh, fourth, I was just excited again to be there, and now I'm like, all right. It's like having when you're a kid and somebody takes your toy away,
Right.
and you're like, I want that toy. You better give that thing back to me. And then finally, when you get it back, and you're like, oh, this thing is amazing. It's the best toy ever. That's how I was. I go through, and I'm like, I prepared the right way this time. I did a lot because I went down to Puerto Rico to do law enforcement down there in the armory, and I had trained a lot. And so now I came back in. I knew what to prepare for. I had a lot of the good insights in how they did training, and I was just ready to get it on. And I was crushing it all the way through 250 and went into Hell Week. And this is, I can't say the guy's name because he's still active. He's a very good friend of mine. I actually worked with him in trade at in the SEAL teams, but he was a brown shirt rollback. He'd already made it through Hell Week and had rolled back. And so they take care of us during Hell Week. And I was going through med checks again. This is, I think, the second day or second night or third day. I can't remember. It's right before there's a point where you've made it through so far, you get rolled forward. And so I can't remember if it was that same day, but at this point, before they give you MREs, the meals ready to eat, they take everything out of them that's good. All the Skittles and candy and stuff like that. They take all that stuff out. Well, I was sitting on the podium out on the beach, and there was an admiral coming through touring Hell Week, and they were coming around talking. He'd given me some Skittles. He's like, "Hey, Murph, here you go. Good job. Keep it up." And they do that for people. That's kind of like the tradition. They help guys out. And so I gobbled down some Skittles, and I'm sitting on this podium. There's this thing called VGE. I forgot the acronym, but it's, you can't hold anything down. And it was going around, and the Admiral, he's walking down, shaking people's hands and asking them, "Hey, how you doing?" Well, all of a sudden I feel in my stomach that sharp pain, and I start that drooling feeling. I'm like, oh no, don't do it. And he comes up, and I get rid of the rainbow of Skittles. Right. I may have actually, you know, let him taste the rainbow as well. I was tasting it for a second time. And he immediately looked at his aide, or the person next to him, was like, "Get that man to medical." And so they pick me up, they take me into medical, and I'm just throwing up all over the place. And I go in there, and everybody was kind of like, this is the guy the Admiral had pointed out. And so I'm sitting in there, I'm kind of laughing to myself. And the doctor, I made friends with the doctor. He was really cool. And I ended up having to, they told me, it's like, "Hey, you've got a lot of eyes on you, and you have to hold down and insure, at least hold it down." And so I
Oh
tried,
my God.
and I didn't hold it down. And then I tried it. When you're exhausted, I tried to come up with a good idea. And I said, "Hey, can I use the bathroom?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure. You're going to drink that Ensure." And so I drank the Ensure real quick, and I knew I was going to throw it back up. So I was like, "I'm going to go to the bathroom." So I go ahead and use the bathroom. And then I threw up the Ensure, thinking that, oh no, they can't hear me. It's going to be, they can't see it. So that I held it down. So I walked back out, and they're all looking at me, and they told me, "This is the last chance you get, or else they're going to have to roll you because you've been out for too long." And so I'm kind of desperate now. Like, I'm not doing this again. And so I went in there, and I threw up in the bathroom, and I came back out, and I was like, "Yep, I'm good." And they all heard me in there. They're like, "No, we heard you, and we can't just put you back in because people don't realize just how scrutinized the medical process is during hell week, because people have died. There's been so many spotlights put on it that it's so detailed. Everything is documented. Everything is by the book." And so they told me again, "Hey, you have to get rolled." And that was going back into, oh no, not again. Please, not again. And I got rolled back into 251. And that was where depression came in. I was depressed. I was like, well, I can do this. This is my last chance. And if I don't make it, then most likely I'm just going to get out and find some other job, because I don't want to go in the fleet. I'm going to hang my head in shame. And so I recalibrated probably 2 weeks after I got rolled, to say, "Okay, lock it back in, Sean. You still have a chance. There's still that moment that could be yours. You just have to stick with it. You've been through much worse. And you know that if you give in to what the external pressures are, then you are letting them define you. Don't let anything else define you other than what you set for yourself." And so that's what I stuck with. And I had a great group of guys that I had met in Puerto Rico, and they were actually in Buds before as well. And they came through, and we ended up being in class 251 together, which I've got my helmets back here. We ended up making it through together, and it was such an incredible experience, especially going all the way through it. I remember sitting in the tents in 251, and now I'm that guy that's like sitting up, like, all right, let's go. I'm still cool and collected, but I'm like, let's get this thing going. Because before, I'm like, yeah, it's going to happen when it happens. And now I'm like, hey, I want to hit this thing in the mouth. Like, let's go. I'm ready to fight this thing. Like, this is the time where I need to prove myself. I've had a lot of adversity, a lot of bad luck, but now I'm going to make my luck. I'm not letting anything stop me. And sure enough, I ended up going through, and that's where I had Eddie, and I had some of the other guys that were really solid. And I think we fed off each other, and thank God nothing else happened, where we all did get VGE and get sick and all that stuff, but nothing stopped us. I don't think I got VGE. I'm pretty sure I got a little sick during there. I actually have scars from getting cellulitis and stuff, but uh, nothing had stopped me on that one. And whenever I sat on the beach, actually today is, he was my best friend, Mark Lee. Me and Mark went through Buzz together. Today is his Angel Day. So I remember sitting on the beach right before we get secured, and they would play games with us, like movie trivia, and seeing Mark waddle over and seeing his little jokes. And that was, I remember those moments vividly of we're about to get secured. And it was like an overwhelming feeling of like, I finally did it. I made it through. And I see the guys, I remember all the guys that I'm seeing that made it through. And it was just a surreal moment that all this time, if I could have easily given up, I could have easily given away, but I never would have felt the feeling I had that day when we were being secured. And just seeing the guys like me, Mark, some of the other guys, I can't see their names because they're still active, but those guys that we persevered through with, like Mark had gone, I think he was in 239 as well, didn't make it through. The other guy, same thing, 239 didn't make it through. We all came back and made it through this class together. So it was a sense of purpose and belonging and accomplishment that all came to a head at that moment. And then when they came out with the American flag and they're all standing there on the beach, all the instructors, they line up on the beach, they plant a flag and turn around and looking at that, and they bring you in and secure you and shake your hand. And going from that very first impression that we had of that instructor that was bringing chaos to you as a pit bull, now you see them as a man. And that's because they were doing their job to get you to that point, and they still had more work to do. But at that point, it's that change of mental and physical challenge, whether or not you can persevere and make it through, that you can be trainable. Now they've gotten you through Hell Week, which is the big test, and now they have like a different view of you. You've proven yourself, and I felt that on that beach going down through and shaking all those instructors' hands at the end of Hell Week, and that was a really, really cool feeling that everything I've been through now, I'm actually setting a path for myself. I'm not letting anything in my childhood define me, any of my past mistakes or shortcomings. Nothing defines me. I just gave myself the opportunity to prove myself that I belong somewhere doing something and being great at something, and other people can see me for that. And that was that day on the beach, seeing all my best friends that I went through Hell Week with. Now we're starting a journey together as brand new tadpoles ready to take on whatever Earth has in store for us, that we're ready to take it on.
You think there was ever a specific moment in Buds where you met a version of yourself that you'd never seen before? Raw, frightening, anything that you had never seen before?
There was quite a few times that I thought to myself, who who is this person? I remember being just, and there's a little building, I think it might still be there, I can't remember. I think they're redoing a lot of Buds, but it was the 618 or 602 barracks. I can't remember which one. There's one right next to the grinder. And it's usually you're in there before you go to Hell Week and make it through. But you come back, it's late at night, and it's after the, I think it was rock portage at night. And you have to, now you take care of all your gear. It's pitch black out, you're cold, but you're excited to be there. And at that point, I just felt extremely motivated. It wasn't something that typically I would do. I always had a positive attitude, but I remember getting up there and being and just sharing with everybody, listen, there, and I could see myself looking at things in a completely different lens. I had, out of all the people that were walking Earth, we were the only ones in that moment. We were the only ones going through Buds together at that time to go and do something that not a lot of people have done. Millions of people roam this earth, but there's only very few that get the opportunity to go through that training together. And so I saw myself seeing, changing, shifting a little bit. I never really had that um, depth of insight, or at least it didn't come out and motivate me the way that it did there, to tell everybody, listen, no matter what we're feeling, we just did rock portage. And rock portage is scary because you're getting thrown up against these rocks out in front of the Hotel Del at night. You can't see anything. You don't really know what you're doing, but you're pulling this boat over the thing. And so we just went through this exhilarating, dangerous evolution, and it's over. And now we get to reset and do something the next day. But I remember seeing myself um, being a little bit fearless on, if we can do that, we can do anything. if I can see that, I can look from a different lens. And I started having all these different viewpoints of, now we're a little bit different, because of what we're experiencing. These experiences, no matter how tough or traumatic they are, they can be a positive, and we can actually have a better outlook because of it, and not be down on ourselves. Because you could see that going through something as chaotic as that, I think that's with a lot of trauma. Like it may hinder you in a certain line of thought. Trauma is trauma, and not let it define you and hold you back. Actually being able to learn or grow through, it's empowering that you can go through. And that's kind of what I changed in that moment, that I'm not going to let this moment slip away. And I shared it with people. And then there's other parts where, um, in buds, there was in pool comp in second phase. I had never gone, I mean, I'd gotten gone diving maybe once in my life, and they put you into this scenario that it's like a surf hit underwater, and you got to hold your breath for a long time. I ended up finding that in myself, I never applied myself in school, and now applying myself in something that has a lot more purpose, that I am serving the people around me that are relying on me. I'm going to apply myself more than I ever could. And so you had to learn the rigs, all the different laws, like Charles Gay-Lussac's law, Boyle's law, all these things that in school I would have discounted them. Now I'm like into it. Now I'm more focused and dedicated. And that was something I'd never done before. I didn't notice that in myself until I'm going through second and third phase of taking it serious. Now I'm interested. Now I can lean forward. And that was a huge change that I saw.
You think you changed that thought of yourself from you're no longer an outcast to now we're a group of outcasts together?
Yes, absolutely. It's because that was the team that I was looking for. Coming from, now, I don't want to take away from family, but coming from a broken home, that was, it was a family, but also I had family in the friends that I had, the people I went to school with, the church that I grew up in, and the people um, in my community. Now I get into the military, and it felt like such a tighter family, much closer, that it was your best friend and it was your brother. And those two cross paths, which is what I was looking for, is how do I feel like stepping away from my family and into an actual hardcore family that is about to go through and experience life together. Even though I had already experienced life with my brothers and my family, now I'm stepping into another one that is it's very different, but very real, in the same way that a family would be growing up. You're going to have your brothers and sisters and your siblings that you're going to fight and not get along with, but this is also one that you went and had a deeper sense of brotherhood, because you're about to go and rely on each other, not to um, make a mistake that could ultimately cost each other your life. And so it had a deeper bond. That's what I was looking for. And so now we're all this rough, and people told us, SEALs are different in the perspective. Like, I think every special operations, once you make it through, you are a little bit different. It takes someone that's different. And different's not bad. Different, actually, is good, because you have to be different and be that outcast to come and do something very spectacular, very different. And I think that's how greatness is achieved, no matter if it's in the military or in civilian life and business. You got to be a little bit different, to separate yourself and to find that next level. And that's really where it felt, changing from being an outcast to now I'm part of a group of misfits that fit in very well together.
What year is this that you're finally done? You've been through your 5 buds classes. What year are you finally done and you actually put the trident on?
2005.
Okay. We're 4 years removed from 2001. You've been around this whole time waiting to go to the Super Bowl. You've done everything you can to go do this. You got to walk me through the first time you step into that combat zone, the first time you're landing in that combat zone. You have achieved exactly what you spent all of that time doing. I want to talk about your emotions, sights, sounds, smells. What do you remember?
Oh, I can remember landing into Al-Assad in Iraq, because right now what had happened is, the guys I went through buds with, Mikey Mansour, Ryan Job, you had Mark Lead passed away. And these guys that I was extremely close with, before them, we felt invincible. Like, SEALs don't die. Well, after that, we had quite a few SEALs die in a very short amount of time in the same location, the same platoon, doing the mission that we're now going to go do. And before that, I was invincible. Now I felt, okay, we can die out here. We can't be careless. We can't have blinders on. People die. This is real. When the ramp opened, it was so hot. I remember feeling like the heat, the dry heat that just hits you, the smell of burnt garbage with sewage, this nasty smell that still is stuck in my brain. And just the busyness, the buzzing, as I'm taking it all in, I can see the tan, the sand, everything that's out there. I just see it. It's very bright. And the once we landed, everything was moving, and we jump into a van that was a Middle Eastern van, and there's these Muslims dressed in, we called them man jammers, just like their dress. And it freaked me out. I'm like, who is this guy? Like, why don't I have a pistol on me that I can defend myself? That we're in a van. Like, is this? I don't know. Like, I'm thinking this is where the movies are, that suicide bombers and this, that, and the other. At any moment in time, and now we're just letting this guy drive us around. Like, where are we?
So you're not kitted up at all whenever, because I've never heard of someone. I think everyone I've ever talked to, when they said they landed, they were maybe not fully, combat ready, but they were at least kitted up.
Nope. So we were in our uniforms. We fly in. All of our kit is in a box, and we land on the air base, and that's where they pick you up and take you to the staging area, to where you do get all kitted up. You throw on your body armor, you get your gun. And so in the airplane, you're not. I flew into Germany and then flew into Iraq, and so we landed and we weren't kitted up. Now I'm sure there may have been other people that did that, but for us, no, not at this point in time. Al Assad, there's such a big base that they took you to a different staging area that you pulled out your kit and put it on. So that wasn't until we had landed and got taken over to our staging area, because you're
Okay.
still on a tarmac.
So I can understand you being a little
Yeah,
nervous.
I felt naked. I felt like that middle schooler walking out of the gym naked, being like,
So after you get you get kitted up, you get out there. Do they move you to a forward base,
yeah.
and then you're going to be out there? So where do you move to this first rotation in?
It was in Habaniya, out there in Iraq, and it was that place was actually pretty nice. I mean, anybody else that would look at it and say this is a dump, but to me that it felt pretty nice, because we had everybody there. There was a big building that we could all stay in, even though it was boarded up windows and it was real dusty, but it felt cool. Like, I got to see like a ready room and uh, barracks that were made out of plywood and 2x4s, but it was cool because it was what we're designed to do, and what in my mind I thought we were going to do, and I loved it.
Does it seem real, or is it so real when you get out there?
It's almost too real that, now, okay, I don't have the luxuries of, you know, being able to call 911. We are essentially the 911 for ourselves, for anybody else that's out there. And so you don't get that opportunity, that luxury. And so you're on your own. It's the Wild West, where you are set aside from the way that society is back in the United States. And it's the first time I was immersed in a new culture that, well, other than Puerto Rico, but they're still part of the United States. The This area, I was so far away. I felt it. I felt distant from the the luxuries they had in the United States. The water wasn't, you couldn't drink water out of the sink. They didn't have actual bathrooms. We did, but it was built in. The way that you cooked food and all that stuff, you had to go to a galley or a chow hall. Um, and if you made food for yourself, you had to get these bins that were brought in, but also you can make food. It was very different. So you're on your own. And it was nice because you learned a little bit more about yourself on how you take care of yourself, how you look at what you do with what you have in front of you to prepare yourself to go out and do the mission that you're designed to do.
Don't you think that goes back to your childhood, though? I mean, that's exactly what we talked about when you were a kid. You're just surviving on what you have in front of you.
Yeah, so I was comfortable in a lot of ways of I'm good with this. You give me, I don't care what it is, and I will make do with what I have. Which is why I say I think most people, a lot of this feels like we're going to be fine. You give us a place, we'll figure it out. I think a lot of combat veterans are that way, that you give me something, I will go and be fine. Like I could go out in the middle of nowhere, I'll be fine because you're trained that way. You learn to be resourceful and uh, make do with what you have. And so that's kind of where I felt there is we were doing a turnover because SEAL Team 3 was they were the guys that we were leaving, and that was right after, like I said, Mark and Mikey and Ryan Job. We'd suffered all that, and Elliot Miller, all those guys that whole deployment that they had, or actually Elliot was on our team. That was the very first one that we did, but um, all that stuff was happening, and so now we're in the position to either bring the fight to them or be timid, and there was no timidness at all whatsoever. Is like I said, it was almost too real. As you're in this, that you thought you can't prepare yourself for what you're about to go into, and you think that you're ready, but you're really not until you are. And that's why mentorship, still to this day, I don't care if it's in leadership or anything in your life, marriage, whatever, you need to have some sort of mentorship or coach to be able to help you through what you're about to get yourself into. Because that's truly what makes teams great. Was I had an excellent group of teammates with me in SEAL Team 5 that whenever it felt a little too real, I was able to lean on them. They were very good at guiding us forward to find what right looked like.
I want to talk about the first time, because we've talked about when you arrive there, how you feel about yourself. The first time you're behind the gun, the first time you are in a gunfight. You've already said that you thought you were invincible before you got there. You see all those things happen, you realize no one's invincible. Now this is, if going to combat is a Super Bowl, this is where it's made right here. What are you thinking going into it? And you've said yourself you can't prepare for stuff like that.
Yeah.
What are you thinking through it? Can you walk me through it?
Yeah, the very first time I ever stepped outside the wire, I I was overwhelmed. I felt it, and for me, the biggest thing was to not let others down. And I wanted my platoon mates to know that they could rely on me. I'm carrying a 60. I weighed maybe 185 pounds, but I also had 180 pounds. I weighed 360 pounds when I walked out the door, so I was carrying a lot of gear. And I remember walking, and I can still see it to this day, the building that's on my left, the street light. And at the time, I had a single night vision. I actually have my helmet up in my closet too that I was wearing. And there's a single the 18s. There was a single night vision tube, and it's supposed to help you. But when that light hit it, it was blinding that thing out, and it caused one of my senses to not be as good as it could be. That made me start to feel a little bit, not a little bit, actually, it was a lot of helplessness. I felt overwhelmed, like I can't see, and then you're in a line, and I saw the front guy. He kind of disappeared with the light, and so it freaked me out. I'm like, uh-oh, now I'm by myself, even though I had people behind me. But he dipped behind the light, and this is happening in like microseconds. And so I was like, oh no, I'm overwhelmed. I couldn't even think. I was so overwhelmed that like everything was tight. I felt that just everything about me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. And I'm patrolling along, and I could feel the weight, and I could hear my heartbeat. I could hear my breath, and inside my head, I was just overwhelmed. I was like, "What if?" I kept saying, "What if a round hits me? Am I going to be able to respond? Am I going to die like a sissy or whatever? How am I going to react when bullets start flying? Am I going to be able to shoot somebody? Am I going to be able to make the decision and the timeliness that my teammates require of me to be effective? And because they rely on me carrying a big gun, I've got to pull a trigger and be safe where I point it? Am I going to recognize I don't want to shoot one of my own guys? I don't want to hesitate and not be able to take the time to shoot. And so I was so overwhelmed. And at that point, I realized that life is bigger than what we have here on earth. And so growing up, I grew up in the church. And so I gotten away from faith, and I was, it was pounded into me. And so at that point was the first time I really reached out and said, God, I know I'm not the best Christian or person, but I need you. And if you want me to die, then I give my life to you. I couldn't control what I wasn't before me. And so I had to let go of that control. And as soon as I did that, it was like, okay, God, I'm not going to try and control my life. You're in control of my life. And as soon as I did that, like the breath I took, it all let go, and it felt like the weight that was on me, something had lifted off of me, and I could see again. I was clear, and I was no longer focused on what ifs. I was now focused on what I could do in front of me, and it started to, and it. I did that quite a bit. I had so many near-death experiences that I wasn't even getting shot at the time. It was just my own self-induced stress that I need to learn to let go of that control that I have control of my life, but I need to let it go to the higher power if my time is called, my time is called. I shouldn't be so consumed with when is it coming? It's going to come. But I just had to learn to let go so I could be effective and be bold enough, but not stupid, to be effective for my teammates. Because that's what they were relying on, is for me to be there for them. And that's what um, really set me into when I did have that opportunity to pull the trigger for the very first time, which was not the typical what I think people would think. Is we were actually in one of the houses, and a really good friend of mine was sitting on the little stairs. He was a sniper, and the comm guy was up there, and they had set up their sniper hide, and I'm down there with the A-dub. And I still think that God loves SEALs because he's taking care of some of us. For some reason, they decided to step down, and one of them had like leaned over to grab something, and a sniper round came in and hit the wall, and it felt and heard like it seemed like a sledgehammer. And right where he was sitting, it would have drilled him right between the eyes, and it hit the wall. And at that point in time, now we're in a gunfight. I actually didn't get to pull the trigger because we couldn't find the sniper. The guy that came in and shot at us was a sniper, and so we couldn't find him. And that I went back to that overwhelming feeling, like, where is this guy? I want to make sure I can see him and shoot him. Um, and so that time passed, but it sat with me that I felt helpless. Like, I want to protect ourselves. I want to be able to defend myself from these rounds that are coming in. We only took about 12 rounds, and everybody kind of took cover to wait, use tactical patience to see where this person was so that we could be very precise on responding. Didn't happen. Well, then the next time that we got into engagement, was we were in this little place called Kidney Bean Lake, and it was when we're going in. I can't remember exactly why we went in there for like the intel reasons, but there was supposed to be some Marines that were being hit by these snipers. And so we had mutually supporting OPs to help each other out, if we got into a contact. And all of a sudden, there was these three guys coming down to this mosque, and we see them, and they come into the mosque. When they come out with sniper rifles. And that was the first time that these guys had came back around. And I remember seeing my buddy sit up, and he said, "Oh crap!" And he got on his sniper rifle and shot him. And then we all came over to the side, and that's when I had the first time I had. This time I was carrying the Mark 14, the SOCOM version of a M14, and I actually had a guy in my crosshairs and had to pull the trigger. And that sense of what am I going to be now? Who am I now as a person? Have to make this hard decision. I remember thinking, am I changed now? What am I going to feel? How am I going to respond now that I've had to um, take another human being's life? Like, I felt really uncomfortable at the time of taking the shot, that if there's another human being that's probably, and this is what's going through my mind. I don't know if it's reality or not, but somebody still loves them. They could be a son, they could be a brother, a husband, a father. I don't know anything about this guy, but I do know that they're coming to kill another human being. And so I had to rationalize in an instant, I'm saving a life by unfortunately having to take this life. And once I did that, it calmed me down quite a bit, because that for the rest of that day, we were in a pretty good gunfight that was very um, chaotic, because one of our teammates, Mark Robbins, had been shot, and he actually got shot in the eye. It came out the back of his head, but he survived. And but we didn't know that at the time. And so all these emotions from the very first time that we engaged to all the way through to experiencing over the radio, hearing that Eagle down, we had a SEAL that was down, and just chaos. We couldn't call in a helicopter. It was way too hot for them to land, and they actually got pushed off. Ended up setting up a different LZ off the way in our QRF, or Marines that came in Humvees, the Quick Reactionary Force. They came in, and then they wouldn't come back in because they'd already come in and got protected the helicopter and the way that unfolded. And then once all that went down, TF-160s came in and got us at night. But that whole feeling throughout that day was extremely overwhelming. And there was a point to where we all consolidated, and we all had to look at each other and said, 'cause no one was coming to get us, and there was a lot of, I mean, they were hammering us, and so we all thought, this is it, this is how we're going to die. And so we had to make peace with it and look at each other and say, hey, if we're going to go down, let's go down fighting. Count your rounds. And so we counted our rounds to make sure we knew exactly how much ammunition we had, so that every shot that we took counted. And that was something I'll never forget, is feeling that overwhelming feeling of, well, this is it, this is how we die. But how am I going to die? I want to, if I could see myself, would I be proud of the way that I went out? And that's what I kept thinking, is like, okay, I'm going to make sure that I keep all those that have families, and all my friends. I want to get them back home. I will sacrifice myself to get them home, because that's how I'd want to be remembered, is honoring somebody else by standing in front of the firing line to prove myself that, hey, guess what? I'm willing to make the sacrifice just to give you one more day with a loved one. And that's still, to this day, I still believe in that it's not about you. If you can better someone else's life, then it's worth whatever it is that you're doing.
But you said that from the very beginning. You said it about the practice team in football and the scout team in college. So there's no doubt that I feel that you thought that way. I got to understand, with what you just said and all of that went through your brain. We'll go back to that question that I asked you before. When this is all over, when you get pulled out by TF-160, you have a downtime, you get that adrenaline dump that everything's over. How do you see yourself, and how do you think others see yourself? You've taken a life that day. You've made peace with death that day. There's been so many things that would a normal person would take them weeks and months and even years to go through. You've lived it in one day. How do you see yourself, and how do you think others see you now?
At that point, I just remember being very grateful to be out of that, um, to have the chance to continue to prove myself to my teammates. I think people see me now as like at that point, I felt like they could rely on me, that they knew that I was going to be there, and that we were in it together, and there was no doubt that it, even that's just, I think, the way that special operations really shapes everybody is what the way that I felt was, I still have more to prove, but at least now they know that I'm there for them. I'm part of the team, and you continuously have to prove. And that's what I felt coming out of that. Even though I'm grateful to be alive, I see the world in a completely different way, that now life is so precious that it could go in an instant. Don't play with it. Make the most of what you got. Don't let the externals uh, control you. You take control. I still, like, throughout life, I think that's been something that I really held dear to my heart, was that the outside does not tell you who you are. You tell you who you are, which makes you who you are. And that's what I kind of came through that with, is even though I had to go through all that chaos, I had to make peace with it, but also know that everything happens for a reason. The timing and everything that happened, I could have joined a completely different time, never experienced any of that. The circumstances, everything, I didn't feel any different as far as like special or anything, because that was something that if you get to a gunfight and all that stuff. And I remember seeing that and wondering, having that curiosity, am I going to be able to do that? And I felt confident that I could. Yes, I know I'm capable of this. Now I have that sense of security now, that sense of purpose, that sense of security, and looking at life that I'm more grateful and appreciative of. Moving through it forward, I still think that I had a lot more to prove, just because every day you need to earn your trident is a saying every day, you earn your trident every day. I still need to prove myself. But they had confidence in me, knowing that I could still step up and be part of the team. They knew that I was now an official team member, that when times got hard, I was going to be there. I could actually help the team achieve success, that I wasn't a liability. Because at that point, I didn't know. I'm sure they had confidence in me, but now I know without a shadow of a doubt that they knew I was going to show up. I'm willing to put myself out there to be part of the team. That, again, these guys that I worked with were phenomenal human beings, inside and out. That I could not ask for a better group of people to be around. That's all I want to do, is make sure that I live up to their standards, and I felt like I was living up to their standards after that moment.
So you really never answered the question that you had for yourself, though. You said one of the first things that went through your head was, am I a changed person now? Are you changed after that?
Not really. I don't. It does it in a way, but not really. I don't think that you're any different. It's just the way that it all transpired, that you, because I thought of the way that society projected PTSD or shell shock, or the way that the Vietnam era was treated. That's what I thought. Like, now I'm going to be this image that people had created, like, oh, they're going to be psychotic, or they're not going to be functioning in society. I didn't felt any different. That I did feel kind of, I felt a little off, because I had to take a human life, which is something that I still today think about. That, it was that the right thing to do. I still think to this day, yes, because if I'm putting on this planet, everybody here has a loved one that they they cherish and they treasure. If someone was to take that loved one, well, why? Is it another human being, and I'm that human being? Now, why did God give me that situation where I had to take that? And those are things that I pray about and think about. But at the same time, I don't feel like I'm going down these deep rabbit holes of why me, poor me, that I thought society was going to, or before society had kind of painted that picture, that now I'm going to be in that. And I wasn't. I didn't feel that much more changed than just having more security, knowing that I could actually prove myself and go to combat and be able to take a human life, and not let that overwhelm me, and be able to send other people home because I stepped up and saved a life.
Well, and here's the thing, though. I think that when you talk about that, about not really changing in your side, I think a lot of the stuff that you were thinking about was all self-induced. It wasn't from an outside. I mean, there was no thing on the outside that was telling you that. That was all in your own mind doing that. But I also think, to prove your point a little more, I think if you worry about that you made the right decision, that you think about that, I think that means that you were doing what you should have done as a human. If you have no thought about it, if you have no care that you did it, I think that's where you get into a problem. If you don't worry that you're a sociopath, then you probably are a sociopath. So I think it's a good thing to think about it to this day. Now, don't get me wrong; it could lead to bad things, but
Mhm.
I think that if you do worry about that and you still think about that should tell you that your brain is doing what it's supposed to be doing.
So yes, here's something that I've started to implement, because now that I've kind of settled down and retired, and done a lot of reflection, and I live my life in the way that I think of, there's a complete warrior. It's not just you're a warrior. Well, you've got to be a complete warrior. And this is not just for the military. This is for anyone. I use warrior because it's terminology that I can relate to. You've got inside that complete warrior, you've got three different categories. You got the warrior in life, which is those that see you, that you interact with, like your husband, your wife, your son, your all the people you have relationships with. That's you've got to have that balance. How you feed yourself, like your diet and all that stuff. You got to take care of your life. That's one warrior in life. Then you got the warrior in the workplace. And that's the people that you work with, that you go to work with, how you apply yourself and the skills that you're applying to make a living. And so that's got, whether it's leadership, whether it's entrepreneurship, however battle you uh, or whatever battle you face, you've got to be a warrior in that. And how do you manage that? And I could peel that apart because I've been through all those. But then there's what I think is the most critical, which is the center of it all, is the warrior spirit. And that's everything that's inside your head. So whenever you step away from the warrior life, the warrior in the workplace, that's where you actually sit down and what's going through your head. Whether you meditate, whether you pray, whether you do yoga, however you reset what's going on in your head and to rationalize that. And the best way to I guess connect with some people is if you think about law enforcement. Law enforcement may suffer trauma or they may suffer a catastrophic event, but then they sit in their patrol cars for days on end, like and not do a lot. And that's if they're by themselves. And I found that in myself. If I was sitting by myself alone with my thoughts, then that's where I can spiral. If I don't have something that helps me guide myself correctly, which is I read the Bible and I pray on different things that go through life. To if I'm casting judgment on myself, then I'm not doing myself any service. I look at how am I going to be judged, and that has helped me out tremendously in rationalizing and keeping my warrior spirit intact, so that when I go into my warrior in life and warrior in the battle or in the workplace, then I'm a little bit more apt to have a moral compass and able to justify and rationalize the things I'm doing there, because they all interact, they all intersect. And for me to lean back on that and bring that to either my leadership style, my um, style in the home, and style at wherever I am, if I'm not complete, it. Let's say, for example, I go into the workplace and I'm stressed and I do something that I don't feel comfortable with, like if I had an integrity violation on myself where I didn't do something I was supposed to do something, and then now I'm stressed about that, and I bring that stress home, and now I'm thinking, oh, great. Now I'm bringing home, and it's happened to me before where I'm stressed at work and I come home and I'm not the father that I want to be. Now I'm bringing myself down. Now I'm crumbling both in life and the workplace. And then I judge myself for my warrior spirit that I feel terrible on both fronts. If I don't understand that, yes, we can all make mistakes, finding a way to balance it out, finding little nuggets. And I found gratitude is one of the better things, is being grateful for those small moments. Yes, I have the opportunity to be a father, even though I'm overwhelmed because of work. But when I'm grateful at being a father because my kids are there and I'm able to be present with them, then I should be grateful, and that helps me manage that spirit, which also has influence over the warrior in life. Now I'm a little bit more calm. I can check myself and reflect and bring myself to be a little bit more complete, and then take that back into the workplace as well. As is now I'm balancing that myself out. And so if for all those things that I considered, even when I think of like I'm inside my head, my warrior spirit, if I don't have something that can help me not just go on my own tangent inside my head that could lead down some very dark places that I've been before, that when I sat down and didn't have that moral compass because I got away from faith and something to guide me, then that can have a detriment to the my mental well-being, physical well-being, and all things considered, and it just snowballs. And that's why I like to look at those things as a complete warrior in life, that if I didn't do that, then I could have really snowballed in many different aspects of my life because of what I went through. And then where I go, all the things that I go through today is making sure that I'm a complete warrior, not just only focusing on my workplace, my life, and my spirit. I need to focus on all three to bring myself together.
What do you think's the most difficult call that you ever had to make as a leader? One that you still think about today?
Most difficult call as a leader. Oh, it was. I had to. I had to let somebody go. I had to fire them when I was on deployment, and it was the right call. But I still, because this guy was a human being. He was an intel guy for me, and I was running an outstation. I was a ground force commander, so I was the center person from everybody. And the whenever we would go out on operations and come back, he would be sitting back, and there were several times that he made mistakes that were easy mistakes to be made, but then they kept getting worse. They kept growing on these mistakes, and I'd had multiple talks with him, and the I finally got to the point to where nothing was coming through. And now there was a point where this was when I was in Afghanistan, and I went out on operation, and one of the Afghanis that we were working with, partner force, had been shot. And so I'm calling back to where he was, that he was supposed to monitor our comms, and he nobody was answering. And so this, I'm thinking, like, how is this possible that nobody's calling back? So we ended up getting back in, and it was because he was sleeping. He wasn't doing his job, and he was telling other people in our tactical operations center, "Hey, listen to this radio." And when I found that out, I was like, "All right, you've got to go." And I didn't want to fire the individual, because for some reason, I felt like I could help him, like, grow into a better person and be a better uh, individual out there. And so that to me was like, I had to be tough on him. Like, hey, I've got to let you go. Like, you're fired. I can't have you here. I got to call your boss, because it could have like detrimental effect that it could now snowball into he wouldn't be able to deploy anymore, and it could make him get fired, and he had to find, like, all the worst case scenarios going through my head. And that was a hard thing for me to do, is just to let him go. But in the end, it was the right call, because then I got a replacement, and she was phenomenal. She did everything she was, and it was a huge weight lift off my shoulders. But firing that guy was one of the hard decisions that I had to make. I know that's not like in combat. There's combat, I think, is a little bit more easier, because you train for it, even though it's um, challenging, but it's high stress. But you learn that making a call, and you can make it a little bit more easier, because that's how your mind is wired. But the human aspect of it, like in business, was much harder for me at the time, because I really didn't like letting somebody go. I wanted everyone that's part of my team to be the best version of themselves. And if I can't help them get there, that weighed on me as a leader. Is like, man, I really wish I could have made him be the best version of himself.
So once again, though, I look at that as you looked at it more on yourself than on him.
100%. Yeah.
You know, they talk about leadership as being kind of the calm in the storm. Do you ever recall a moment that you almost lost that calm, and how you kind of found your way back from it?
Yeah. Yeah. There was, oh man, in Afghanistan, there was a, it was the very first night that we went out in Afghanistan. I was a ground force commander, and there was a lot going on. I had people all over the place, and I had to manage where everybody was, because I had to manage the aircraft, I had to manage the people on the ground, and I had to talk back to the Joint Operations Command, where my task force commander was.
What
My
rank are you when you're
I was
doing
an
this?
E6 at the time. I'm only an E6 doing
Okay.
the job
Okay.
of an O4 or O5.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Well, that's where at development group, that's typically what happens is you've proven yourself, so you get a lot more responsibility laid on you to go and do these things. And that's what actually is good for us, is that we get to go out and do these things, because that's what we're trained to do.
But how long had you been at development group when you did that?
This was I'd been there for maybe 2 or 3 years now.
Okay, so I mean, you've had your you've paid your dues for it. I mean, you're ready for that
I'm still
position by
paying my
then.
dues. You never at development group, you never stop paying your dues. You're always paying your dues.
Right. That's not what I mean. I mean that you have had
Yeah,
your time in the
yeah,
saddle. You're ready for something like that. It's not. I mean, this isn't
yeah,
something that's been thrust upon you all of a
yeah.
sudden when
No,
you do
no,
this.
you're right. I've been in the teams for a while, and I
Right.
can handle it. And but during that, my communicator was standing right next to me, and we had raided a compound. We got the guys, and there were some of the prisoners that, or I guess the detainees that we had. Um, and so I'm trying to figure out where everybody is, because now we're all spread out. And right next to me, I'm grabbing the radio from my communicator, Brian. Actually, last week I did a leader dev with him in his company, which was ironic. And so I've got him right next to me. I grab my radio. Just as I key up, a guy right next to us, one of the prisoners had attacked one of our Afghani partner force, and jumped. And so they started shooting him. So as I key up, gunfire erupts, and this radio I'm keying up goes theater wide. So everybody that's in their joint operations commander or tactical operations center comes over the satellite radio and they can hear gunfire. And now I get my call sign. I said, "We'll update when able," because I didn't know what had happened. I've got everything settled. I'm giving up my little spiel to my boss, which is he was a great leader, giving him the roll up. And as soon as I key up, gunfire, and I say, "We'll update when able." And so everybody's freaking out. And so all this pressure is on me. This is the very first call that I've made as a ground force commander. And so now I'm thinking, all right, I just sent a radio signal across the theater of gunfire and "will update when able." They think the worst case scenario. In my head, I'm trying to rationalize, okay, what just happened? Why is this guy shooting? And now I have to reestablish all the facts and details so that I can send over the radio. I gave my communicator the handset as like, let me figure out what's going on and then I'll make comms. And so he's like telling me, "Hey, everyone's asking for you to get on the radio like right now."
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to like just take a breath, and I call over our inter squad comms to some of the guys that they're actually senior to me. And I was like, "Hey, where are you at and what's going on?" And they're at, "I'm here. What's going on with you guys? We heard gunfire." And I was like, "I'm trying to figure that out. I'll let you know what happens, but keep me updated." So I now have like a mental position and understanding of where everybody is, because I want to make sure all my guys were good. And then I grabbed the partner force and was like, "What happened?" And he's trying to explain to me, and you have the communication barrier. You have terps, you've got people speaking another language, people yelling all over the place. And so finally what had come out was they had to shoot this guy because he was trying to take the gun away from one of the other soldiers. So they shot this guy. And so now I'm like, how do I explain that this guy that was detained by the partner force was shot? And I can't say that over the radio because it would be miscommunicated. And now I'd have to like figure out how do I tell the rest of the people that are now intently listening, because they want to support what's going on at my outstation, that I have to explain away on the radio that a detainee was shot. And so I said, all right, let me think about this. And at that point, like it was, how do you maintain composure in such a high stress situation that whatever you say is going to be heard across the nation or across our AO, and you have to be very careful what you say. So I pulled it all together, and I literally just went down the roll up, and I told my boss, "This is something I'm going to have to pull you aside to talk about, but this is what we call the roll up." And I went down each line and said, enemy KIA 1. And so I gave them the details that they needed and said, "We are under control here. No further support needed." So it was very tempting just to try and explain away on the radio what had happened. Because in my head, the scenario that just took place, even though you couldn't see it was on the radio, you can only hear it. I thought everyone knew exactly what happened. So I'm like, okay, what do I say to make sure that I tell the truth, but I also don't create chaos with what is about to get sent over the radio? And luckily, having a great boss, when they said, when he heard me say that everything was okay, they were, in my head, they were like, "Hey, what?" I thought they were like, "Hey, tell me what happened." It was almost like, have you ever been in trouble and you go in the principal's office and they're like, "Just tell me what happened." Like you think they already know. And so you're kind of stuck in that scenario where, okay, do I lie here
Self-preservation.
as a kid? But it kind of felt that way, but I wasn't lying. It was just telling them the details they needed so that we could figure out and get back home safely, to actually go back and have the conversation, but not tell the conversation over over the radio that everyone's going to hear in theater. And that was something for me that um, I learned that stick with what you're doing that's right. Always have the integrity that you need, and don't try and weave a web that you're going to get stuck in, especially when everybody across theater that can hear. So more, don't give too many details that isn't necessary. Give them the amount of information that is necessary to continue on so that you can actually have that conversation and unpeel what happened. Because there were still a lot of things that at the time I didn't know had happened. I didn't know which person it was. I didn't know which Afghani had done it or the circumstances leading up to that. Why were they in that position? So I had a lot of details to gather, a lot of facts to gather before I could make an informed decision on anything. But I did need to give that information to the headquarters that was requiring that of me so that we could make the mission a success, then go do the fact finding, make sure that I didn't say something that would ultimately be untrue. And then now I'm having to unpack what I had said. And so that was a very big challenge as a leader, to maintain that composure, not just blurt out on the radio, oh, we've got guys firing guns and I don't know what's going on, even though that's what I felt inside. But I had to stop for a second, take a breath. Okay, what do they need from me? Here's the information. And that's truly where I learned will update when able is a powerful tool, because I kept saying will update when able. Hey, I will update when able. And that actually was one, letting them know I will give them the information when I have it. And they're letting me know that I'm okay. If I would have came across and said anything other than that, I think that it would have caused chaos. So I used it in a way that I think was effective, but it could be used in many different ways. And that was one that helped me keep my composure and say, I will update you when I can. And it's the same thing as now I use in leadership. I don't know. I can get you the information and get that back to you so that you don't say something that leads people in a wrong direction. So I care more about, if I don't know, I'm not going to lie to you. I want to make sure that you have the right information. If not, I'm going to go get the information. If I don't have the information, I'm going to get the person that does and help you get the information that you need so that we can work together better, because we're all in this together. Let's go find success together.
Yeah, I have another way of saying it. Never use 5 words when 3 will work. So, so
Brevity is key.
those extra 2 words can really do it to you. We haven't talked a lot about your personal life. You're living the life, man. You did 5 hell weeks. You make it through buds. You make it to the Super Bowl. Then you make it to the elite team of those teams. Your personal life or your professional life is going fantastic. How's your personal life doing through all of this, through all these deployments, through all of everything that's happening in you as a person?
Well, as a person, and this is kind of what I deal with now, to help people understand this. When you come into the Navy, it's any military branch. At the time, I didn't understand what values were. And so now I'm given a set of values that are for the military. You're living out the military values. The mission comes first. The needs of the military is what comes first, not your needs. Your values are not there. It's the military values. And so now you live this and you become that. And so when I'm going through my personal life is more kind of a secondary thing. I For like relationships, I went through relationships because they weren't the priority for me. And I think that's God's way of like saying, I'm saving the right one for you because you would screw it up right now, which I probably would have, because everything in my personal life was set aside. I would go out and have fun. Like I loved riding dirt bikes because I grew up, wanting to ride motorcycles. And so now I did that. I enjoyed the things that I could, but I still had some way of connecting it back to work. And so my personal life always had a loop back into work somehow. Everything that I was doing was for the values and the needs that the military told me that I had to live. And I for all my life, I didn't really live with that understanding until I had surgery. I had a knee surgery, and that's where it stopped me, that I had time to stop and think, and I became really depressed. And that was a very heavy weight to sit and think of, like, what am I going to do? Like, who am I? It made me like inward think a little bit more like, well, who am I outside of what I just described, the military's values, the military's needs. And so without another sense of purpose, knowing that as my career started winding down, my personal life was all about the military still. Like everything that I did was I thought about the mission, I thought about my teammates, everything else but myself. And so personal life was almost non-existent in a way that I loved having my friends. I loved going out and meeting with other people. And the friends that I had were work friends. I had a few that were maybe acquaintances outside of the people that I work with, but it wasn't a lot. I didn't get to come home a lot. I missed a lot of funerals of my family members, and it was just different because I didn't really have much of a personal life. And that I think is, I'm assuming is a little bit more common in the military because like I said, you come in, you live on base for the first few years in barracks, and you're being ingrained in that culture and lifestyle that your life is not necessarily yours, it's the military's. And so everything is driven back towards it. And so my personal life was um the only the like I have a picture of me and my puppy Vader. When I first got him, that's when I felt like I actually had like a personal life because now I had something else other than myself to think about. And that was good for me because it helped. He saved me, and I thought that I was rescuing him because I rescued him from um, a center or a shelter. But in the long run, he saved me because it kind of helped me balance myself out. And he was very in tune with me. He's very supportive, and so um, personal life was very different,
How,
very military oriented.
how many years into your career are we talking when you get this dog?
Oh wow, I was already a dev group, and that was probably, man, that was probably 12, 13 years into my career.
So I got to ask, and I don't know any other way to ask it, but when you look at that and you see your career and then your personal life, a dog making you feel like you have something again, is that depressive to you at the time when you look at that?
Yeah. Mhm.
Or are you rethinking like decisions that you've made? Or I got to understand that because when you
Yep.
say that, it sounds incredibly sad that you look at the dog and you're like, oh, yeah, I am a person.
Yeah. So my I kept thinking that I had to give everything to the military. And so for that, I looked at I always wanted to be, a good dad and find a wife to be a good husband to or for. And so when I'm missing all those opportunities when I had the dog, now I'm thinking the reason I didn't really understand why I wanted a dog so bad, but it was because it was like I needed something to pull me away. I need something to like reset me because I was failing in all those other areas in a way that I don't look at failure as the end of something, but I was missing those opportunities to be that mature adult to have those lives. And I still to this day I don't know how guys did it when they were active duty going through all the chaos that we did, the time that they were away, the spouses, oh my gosh, like the spouses, they should give them medals and not us because they're doing the job of two at home worrying about if their husband's going to come home or not. And so for me, I looked at when I sat and had the dog and or when I had Vader and started to think like really like what am I missing here? Like I'm getting older. Have I missed my window? And it was like sobering to where life had gone by so fast. I had given everything that I could, but I didn't feel as full as I could have because now I have this other life that relies on me. And so that started to resonate with me as like, what did I do that I needed to step back and say, who am I? And when I started doing that, then I started to think, this doesn't last forever. You're not going to be that military member forever. Yes, the legacy will remain. You helped, yeah, because I'm a firm believer that the uniform that you get issued to you is just that. It's borrowed, it's issued to you, but then you hang it up. And so those other people that step in the uniform, they got to carry that forward. You step out of it, and then you have to be yourself again. And I wasn't ready for that conversation with myself of why am I not, having a family now? So in a way, I felt like I was doing something wrong. I was failing at myself in a personal way, that I wasn't becoming a husband and a father. Because one, is there something wrong with me? Am I really this out there, that I've given so much to the SEAL teams that now I can't be myself? Like, I've separated who I am, and I got to rediscover who Sean Murphy is again, because I had lost who I was at that point in time. That dog was what Vader. I say that dog, but he's more of like he's my firstborn child. That's what he is. Even though I didn't have him, but that's why I look at him. He helped me pull out of that understanding of, there's more to life than just the life that you're living, and that helped me uh, have some hard conversation. But it is kind of depressing. I was depressed, and it was because, going back to that whole warrior on the battlefield, I was all in warrior in the battlefield. Didn't have a warrior in life. My warrior in life was suffering, which ultimately led to that warrior spirit suffering as well.
So are you back to being an outcast like we talked about when you were a kid? You back to being that outcast now? You don't have a wife, you don't have kids. Is that how you look at yourself again when you're having these conversations with yourself? Oh, great, I'm back to being an outcast.
Yeah, you're exactly. Yeah, it's almost like the pendulum swung back. Like, I'm being fulfilled now. I'm like, oh, now I'm back to like, well, all this that I sacrificed and went through, what did I do that for? Now I don't have what, like, I'm trying to prove myself for. I have it to my teammates, but I don't have it for myself. And so at that point, trying to rationalize and connect with the two ends, where I am today, where I was as a kid, and the arc in between, that it kind of felt like it was that circle right back into, well, did you really do the right thing? Were you really successful, or were you so selfish that you wanted to go prove yourself in the SEAL teams, that you got disconnected from yourself? And guess what? Society, like, if you grew up as a poor kid that, didn't have the grades in school and had a rough upbringing, that you're ultimately going to fall back into that, because you can't function as a human being, just as society uh, labeled you when you were a young kid. Now I'm back into that position where society has labeled me as a failure, because I don't have a husband, or I'm not a husband, and I'm not a father. So that was a sobering and a hard moment, that made me realize, because I was in relationships and I would fail them. Just one, because um, I don't think that I took them serious, because I put everything in the SEAL teams, and it wasn't until I actually met my wife that I was really focused on her and not the SEAL teams. And she had a son, which helped me as well. That he was 2 at the time, and so that helped me reconnect with the human side of being me, not just being the soldier, the sailor that I was in the military.
So let me ask you then, and I want you to be brutally honest with it. When you're going through this, and you're having this epiphany in your life,
Mhm.
do you resent the teams a
No,
little
not
bit?
no,
Not at all.
not at all.
Even when you look at it and you say, I'm missing this whole other part, I'm not, there's no resentment whatsoever.
No, not at all. Because it was my choice. It was my decision.
Which that sounds to me, that's like a crazy way to look at it, where you know that it should be this, and but there's no at all. And that it shows how much you cared about that position that you were in, though, that you were willing to forego that to do it.
Yeah, I don't. And that's the thing, is I don't resent anything about, like, I would do it all over again, knowing that there's a plan in place. And that goes back into like where I am today, of having to reflect on that. And that's why I'm so big on the complete warriors, because I've seen the plan that I have, like the reflection that I get to do now, and the stuff that I jot down. Like, I've written so much I could put into a book of the reflection of the complete warrior. And that's how I look at it today. There's a plan in place. And going back to the sliver of a chance and a hope, if I was to shut that door myself, and I could have given in, said, it's very tempting to say, okay, if I lean in on the I can't, that I'm just going to lean into this lifestyle and go off on this extreme way, I'm shutting the door on myself. And to relate that to being a father and a husband, I got that opportunity, and I'm very blessed to have that in my life. But I do think that, there's a plan, and we have a greater um, sense of, really, I think that God is the one that creates everything for us. And so we have choices along the way. We have the freedom of choice. And so I look at my plan that was put in place is there for a reason. And I can either beat myself up or be a little bit more patient and reflective on what can I learn, what can I carry forward, just because of that whole complete work. Now that I've been able to stop and take pause to reconnect with who Sean Murphy is, and then also fulfilling a lot of those things that at that time that I could have been resentful, I could have been bitter, and I could have lived a bitter life and just gone down a very negative, bad path. I choose not to, and it's where I'm very grateful and blessed to have pulled myself out of that and found connection. I owe a lot of that to my relationship that I have now with my wife and my son Jack. That when I met them, that was like a newfound hope that there's, again, that sliver of a chance that is out there that I can take serious and be a good. I went. They call it Insta family. I became Insta family. Like instantly got married and had a kid, which was a life changing. It was a whole new stress, a whole new burden that was a blessing. And I say burden in a positive way because it taught me a lot about becoming a man. I thought I knew what a man was in the military, but now I learned what truly a man was. That being a man is being able to provide and to um, learn from your mistakes, find out how to be the best version of yourself continuously, even when you feel like there's no um, hope or there's no light at the end of the tunnel. There is. You just got to keep moving towards it and be a man. And that's what I really attribute to going into the instant family and setting aside. Yeah, you can be Navy SEAL, but that really isn't really defining what a man is, because there's so many people that are men that aren't Navy SEALs.
So, how long before you get out or do you get married?
Oh, we got married in 2018, so
So,
6 years,
6 years.
roughly 6 years. Yeah.
Do you think, because of everything that we've talked about, it seems like it would be a very hard balance for you, even with this new life, the wife, the kid, for you to give up what you had done for so many years and be kind of middle of the road? Do you think you still strove as hard um, with wanting to have that combat, wanting to have that time in the teams, or do you think you balanced it out? Because with how you've answered everything, I think it would be a very hard balance for you.
Yeah. Hmm. Are you saying that if I was to be married earlier, that it would have changed uh, the way that I viewed going into combat?
No, well, here's what I think. If you would have been married younger, and seen more of how that life affected the person back home, you had 6 years left. How many rotations do you do after you get married?
Oh, that's a good question. I think 3.
Okay. You have to you have to experience those rotations differently. Now you're married, now you have a kid. There's stuff that you're coming back to. You're not just coming back to the dog. You're coming back to someone who is counting on you
Yeah.
in the end. Do you approach things differently whenever you're doing these rotations to your life? And is married life exactly what you thought it would be?
That question should always be a no. Married life is not ever what you think it's going to be. Um, it's in good and bad ways. But in a way, so going back, if I was to be married earlier, the way that it changed me in now I had a better sense of calling home, and I was more connected with being home. Before I was so immersed in being in combat that that's all that was on my mind nonstop. Everything about me was
Even when you weren't in combat, correct?
correct.
Okay.
So everything was about how do I better myself, be the best SEAL best, what I thought the best version of myself was being the best version of a SEAL. And so that way everything was circling in. But I also, now when I got married, I also had to be that husband, that father. And so I had to look at things differently and use a little bit more wisdom on some things to know that I've got to apply myself in a different space here. It's like being a brand new guy. You have to learn that sometimes you're gonna have to do the dirty jobs. You have to start over, be part of the team, and and you got to learn and grow. Even in leadership, I look at, even as you take a new position in leadership, there's going to be things that you're going to make mistakes. You got to learn and grow in that, and that's what's going to ultimately make you a better person, is learning and growing. And that's kind of what happened when I got married. Was I had to balance the SEAL from the husband. And when I did that, I started to learn, like, I've got a lot to learn about being a husband. And I still am to that, like that today. I'm still learning every single day. And that's a philosophy I've always learned, is learn every single day as much as you can. Because if you don't, like, you become stagnant and you lose that sense of purpose. You lose that sense of well-being, in my opinion. That warrior spirit, it starts to dwindle because you're not growing inside. You're not learning and growing and finding something to fulfill that space inside of you that's called purpose. And if you're not doing that, it's a dangerous road to hoe, because you could end up, um, one, in a broken relationship, two, broken mind, and it could break you altogether. And that's something that I look back at once I got married in the teams. I had to balance that, because again, I was pulling away. Like, not everything was about the SEAL teams, and I had to be everything about the family, and so I had to balance those because I wanted them both, which was, in a way, was filling me, but it was also tearing me apart. Of how do I balance this? And so I had to learn and lean on the guys that had done that, and there were some very good leaders that gave me some wisdom on build equity at home so that we can have you here at work, and vice versa. And so that's what I did, and that's still to this day, I love to uh, put stuff on people that my teammates and mentors help me on how to make sure that if your home life is not straight, you need to make it straight so that you can bring the best version of yourself to work. If you continue to break yourself at home, you're ultimately going to have two fronts that are going to break.
Did you ever have any wake up calls being married?
Define wake up calls.
Things that happen that make you, even if, you know, momentarily shift priorities?
Yes, absolutely. When my daughter was born, that was a big wake up call, because my wife and I, we had a rough beginning. I think we're two people. I met her in Seattle, and so we finally moved in together after we got married, and we had Jack, who was 3 or 4 at the time. And so I'm learning to be. He's teaching me to be a man. He's teaching me how to be a father, and just at 3 or 4 years old, because I had to make a whole bunch of adjustments. And it was easy with him because he's such a sweet kid that had, um, he was very emotionally intelligent. And my wife and I, learning to get along, how to live with each other, and love each other, and keep growing in our relationship. Well, once my daughter was born, she was born during COVID. The day the country locked down was the day my daughter was born, and she was born 2 months early. And that was a very hard time for me, because the whole story about how she was even brought into this world was chaotic, because I thought both my wife and my daughter were going to die. That was the last thing that I was told whenever they whisked her away to the delivery room. But when she was born, she was in the NICU. Um, that was the weight that was put on my shoulder, that hey, you need to put this first, because this little baby that is, I don't know if she's going to make it or not, but you've got to focus on your family, and work can wait. Because I was in the NICU dealing with some very challenging leadership problems. One, because of COVID, and two, because the people that I was trying to manage, that were not the easiest to manage. This was when I'd taken over another leadership role, where it was requiring me to manage SEALs and non-SEALs. The SEALs were easy to manage. it was the non-SEALs that I was not used to because of a different approach. And those two collided, and I realized that it was pulling me away from my family by the behaviors of others that was unacceptable, and that I shouldn't try and lean in as much to try and focus on the work aspect of it. Because when you have I have a picture of me um, in the NICU when my daughter was born, that I wanted to be present for her, even for the brief moment. If she was going to pass away at any given time, I wanted to be there as a human being, as a father for my daughter. And I was, at one point, there are some pretty negative things that were going on at work that were pulling me away. And I had to make that wake up call. I was like, you know what? I'm not dealing with that. I'm not going to put myself into that situation, give that energy to them when my daughter, if this is the only chance I get with her, I'm giving her that. And so that's where it woke me up to say, this is the reason why you need to be present as a father, is because that human life, you never know when it's going to go away. You never know if you have one day or years. Approach it the way that is going to mean something to you and to that person, because I wanted her to be changing my diapers one day instead of me just having a short amount of time. I wanted to be able to be there for her. And that's what really matters, is that long-term commitment, that your family's going to be there, work is not. And that was a very defining moment for me, as a wake-up call. Hey, don't be so connected to work. You've got to be connected with your family, because they need you. This is something that you can stumble through mistakes in a marriage, but once you have kids, Jack and my daughter Amelia, once they were present and that wake up call came in that NICU whenever my daughter was born, that's when I learned, okay, work was consuming me, and I was making my identity work and not as a father and a husband. And that was something that I always wanted to be, was a father and a husband. And now that work was taking that away from me, I had that wake up call. I was like, okay, some people, you can't always deal with everybody and their problems. So no matter how bitter and mad they are at life, you've got to live your life as a husband and father to be a good person there, and also be the leader that you need to be at work. Because if I was only a leader at work and struggling at home, then what that does is it creates that imbalance. And I'm not that complete warrior that I talked about before, is because of one was taking over the other.
Well, and the most interesting part of all of that, you say that when your daughter's born and you learn that life could end at any moment, you might not have this chance. You would think all the years you spent in combat, the friends you lost and everything, that you would have known that years prior to that. That it's
It is, but it's in a different way. I know that when you go into combat, um, life could end like that. Life could end in an instant. And so I could mentally prepare myself for that, because I was putting myself in those situations.
right.
My friends and I were. When it came so personal, that's when it changed. It changed a lot more, and it made me connected to. And exactly like you said, life, because of what I've gone through, life could end at any moment. I think that's why I looked at sitting there watching my daughter she's got tubes in her, and the doctor saying, like, we don't know. The NICU nurses, they're angels on earth, but they're helpful, and there's all these little babies in there. Some made it and some didn't. It's very sad. And so having your own daughter in there, that kind of made the connection of, I'm somebody's son. So my mother and my father, I can only imagine what they're thinking. I'm glad they were ignorant to some of the crazy situations that I had been through, so they didn't have to worry. I wouldn't want them to worry, but I was selfishly putting myself in that situation because that's what I wanted. Um, and that's where I really hope that my kids, they choose a path different than mine. If they do, I'm going to support them, but at the same time, it's going to, whatever hair I have left on my head will probably either run away or turn white, just from the stress alone of worrying about them, because life is so precious, right? Life, you never know how many breaths you have and which one's going to be your last. And having that moment with my daughter made me think of, where do I give my energy to? Who earns and deserves my energy? And it's my family. And even though I did give my energy into work, but it was a lot better balance.
So all of this is happening. You retire. you become this three different people inside of you, but you step away from it, and to some point, that first part of the three different people is gone. That warrior is gone. It's still there, but you're not using him on a daily basis like you were. When you step away from it, how does it make you feel?
At first, I felt free. And I say free in a way that I no longer have to put in a leave chit. I don't have to route a request chit for things to go and visit my family and anything that I do, or, I'm not going through random drug screenings and all the little nuances, all these little minor things that I was very annoyed with in the latter part of my career. Like, I've been drug free for 20 years, 22 years. Why are you still drug testing me? I don't do drugs. And then the same thing with all the general military trainings, the GMTs that were thrust on you. You had to go do this, or this gets shut off. You don't get access to your emails. Like this constant nagging. But that freedom that I felt because I didn't have any of that was actually a blessing, because going back to what I said before, the Navy, the needs of the Navy, they were doing all those things to make sure that I was taken care of on every aspect of my life, so that I was being the qualified, structured sailor that they needed me to be on the career path that I was on. So everything was done for me. And when I left that and I had that moment of like, I don't have this anymore, I felt helpless. I felt going back to where you have it all figured out, or it was figured out for you, and you have this blindness that it's all figured out. Now I've got to make decisions about where's the best schools to send my kids. What about medical? What about a job? How am I going to make ends meet? How much money do I need to make? How much can I afford to live on? And what does my background do for me to help me find a job? And there's so many other things of like the day-to-day routine. Everything just felt overwhelming, that before I had it all figured out. I went to the most elite SEAL team out there. Now I've got to come out and be this human being that
You're just a guy.
I'm just a dude, just
Yeah.
another guy out there,
Just a dude standing next to a dude.
yeah, just a dude standing next to a dude.
Yep.
So how do I function? And it, coming back full circle, I realized that you've got to, at that point, like, as overwhelming as I felt, you're back into that new guy position. You're not going to have it all figured out. You're going to make mistakes. There's resources out there. There's people out there that have been through what you've been through, one step at a time. Make a decision, make a choice, put it in a plan, do as much as you can, but not overwhelm yourself. And that's really helped me disconnect from that overwhelming feeling of like, I don't have a purpose. I go back to, if you ever sat down, it's actually what we do with our leader development, and I've incorporated into the planning. But if you sat down and if you look at what are your values, what's important to you, if you sit and think about those things, it can help you find some structure into that wandering that you have of what's important. And we have everybody go through this long list. Hey, read through these things, sit and reflect on them, and then circle like 10, and then break it down to 5. What 5 and why? And I have my 5 and why that really stood out and are concrete for how I live my life. And so that's what I use now as part of a guiding tool for me to start playing into what's important, because I was living the military values: honor, courage, commitment, the Navy values that they tell you to live. And so that's what I always thought of is, well, honor, well, courage, commitment, where's any of that in my personal life? Like, that doesn't align with who I am. That's not really, and that was as a sailor, but now I'm got to do something in my personal life. And so I wrote out my values, and that's something that helped me find that new path that I could be proud of myself and start having fulfillment and serve a purpose. And they all work together to find out what means the most to you, and then align it. And one of our Patriot Pathways that we do for veterans out at UHP is it's free for them. And so they just come out there, and it's a curriculum I've designed and implemented. They come through and they help build a blueprint off this think, train, fill, and lead model that our CEO started. And that really helps veterans guide them into pulling away from that military version of themselves to let's find a path for you that really makes you who you are, so that you have support, you have a foundation that you can move through, because everything else was structured for you from your values to the needs. Now you got to figure out what your values are and what your needs are. And that's what we help them do with the blueprint. And that's once I made that disconnect from being lost and being like, well, what now? To having something that I can live by and think and anchor to help me make choices and decisions one step at a time to better myself.
Well, I think that's a perfect transition. Let's talk about Hit the Surf.
Okay. So Hit the Surf, that was I started that 2018 as a company because I didn't know what I wanted to do when I got out. And one of the things that I always loved doing was helping people learn and grow. And a good friend of mine that races NASCAR, I met him in 2012 or 2011, I can't remember. And he came to me one day and said, "Hey, I want you to come in and do team building for my pit crew, or both my pit crews." And I said, "Okay, how do you want me to do that? I've done it before. I've done team building, in the military and stuff like that." And so he's like, "I don't know." And I talked to his dad, and his dad was like, "You guys," both of them said, "You need to start a company, get a logo, do something quick, and you could do something like this for a career." And so I started the company, Hit the Surf. So Hit the Surf, everybody, I for the I guess association, people thought it was like a surfing company. Well, Hit the Surf was an idea I got from Buzz, because Hit the Surf was a word that every SEAL knows. You're told to hit the surf multiple times throughout the day. Well, the reason why it resonated with me and why I wanted to incorporate that into team building was the um the feeling you get when you're failing, because they push you to failure in Buds often. And when I went to the point of failure where I feel like I'm just terrible at whatever it is I'm doing, whether I'm failing at push-ups or flutter kicks or whatever evolution we're running, they would tell us to go hit the surf. Well, I looked at it as that's an opportunity. It's a race to the surf zone. So now that opportunity for me to run and hit the surf was a new way that I could win something, make a little small victory. And when I did, I would jump in the water. The water's ice cold in San Diego. And when I jumped in, it felt like pins and needles. Have you ever been so tense and feel like you're filled with hot air? Like if you're working out or you're doing something, you're struggling. Well, when you hit the surf, you jump in and you feel that cold water come over you. When you come up out of the water, it's like that hot air just evaporates and it just cools you off, and all that pressure and tension in your shoulders just relaxes. And so big deep breath and relax. Jump out of the water from hitting the surf. Now you're back into another competition to be the first one back there to go through the suck again. But it was just an opportunity to feel refreshed, and that recalibrates my mindset and thinking when I would hit the surf. Then when I got out, I could have another opportunity to have a better outlook to go and find success and victory. And so that's what I named the company, because I sat and thought about it. And so now it's just Hit the Surf for HTS, and I do all my team building through because I just moved over to UHP as the VP of Corporate Leadership and Patriot Pathway, which is for the veterans. But I still do law enforcement and stuff like that. And so I've done so much with Hit the Surf, and that was my first step into entrepreneurship, where I would go figure something out. And that's something that I had a lot of mentors. I'd grab people that knew business and have them help me out and learn from them. And I made a few mistakes along the way of administrative stuff. And once I figured that out, it helped me have a better outlook on what I can do and what I'm capable of, and how valuable it is to go through the soft skills that I did and learned in the SEAL teams and be able to bring that into corporate life to help others learn and grow. Because I have a passion for helping people, whether it's any little thing throughout a day, or even a larger thing, such as doing one of these corporate leadership developments that we do.
So, to kind of wrap up this conversation, when the noise fades and it's just you, what's the story that you hope your family and your friends remember, and the one they tell about you? Beyond being a SEAL, beyond being anything, what's the story you want them to remember?
Never giving up. He never gave up. Even when things were hard, he found a way. That's something that I always want them to think for themselves, is if there's something like a legacy that I can leave behind, is never give up. There's always hope. Lean on your faith in yourself and in God, and you will get through anything. Because I want them to understand that. That's something that I've learned along the ways, and if as long as I can show them that, show up, just keep showing up every single day. That would be what I'd want them to remember about me.
I definitely think after our conversation that if they don't remember that, there's something wrong. So let's talk about where people can find you. Social media, websites, anything like that.
Yeah. The University of Health and Performance is where I'm at now, where you can find me, and that's a university-hp.com. But there's also hitthesurf.com, trivetllc.com. Those are my websites. At Hit the Surf is on Instagram, and I'm on Twitter and Facebook as well. You can find me on all those social medias. LinkedIn is probably the most responsive that I'll be. On LinkedIn is usually where I make most of my connections and network.
And let's talk about where people can, for the team building and the different things that you're doing now, how they contact you for that kind of stuff.
You can either contact me through LinkedIn or actually go direct to the website, university-hp.com. And there's all the information that you need there. And there's also, they have a really cool Instagram page, university or UHP on Instagram. And all that stuff is connected through all my profiles. So go there and find out more. It's really exciting to see this campus grow with helping veterans and leaders across the nation find the best version of themselves and to better themselves and to carry their legacy forward in a positive way.
And just to point out, it is not just military. You're also helping with first responders, law enforcement, correct?
At UHP, law enforcement, we're getting into some first responders and some of the certified professional training courses, but Patriot Pathways for veterans only. But the leadership development is for anyone in any industry at all.
Well, man, this has been awesome. I'm so glad that AJ hooked us up together. We went back and forth trying to figure out, and we finally made it happen. This has been awesome. Thank you so much. I'm honored that you came on here and told your story, and it's one of I got to tell you, someone that won't quit at something. I don't think I've ever heard a story compared to the stuff that you have gone through, and it's simply amazing. So thank you so much for being on here. Guys, you know where you can find Sean. Let's talk about where you can find me. As always, you can find me on Instagram at the DTD_podcast. You can find me on Facebook at the DTD podcast. And you can find me on YouTube, where all these conversations are in video form. But your one-stop shop, dtdpodcast.net. That's where you're going to find everything. Audio, video. Sean's going to have his own page with photos on there, all of the links where you can get a hold of him for everything that he's doing now after retirement. It'll all be there, dtdpodcast.net. It also keeps you involved with everything that we're doing and everything that we're going to do. Make sure that you go check it out there. As always, be a friend, tell a friend, like, share, subscribe. If you like what we're doing, please help us get these stories out there. We're trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and we're on a pathway to do that. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and you tell your friends about it. Let's talk about one last thing. The guys that make this show happen, my buddy Hoot over at Nomadic Research, nomadicresearch.com. If you want hats, shirts, hoodies, bags, anything like that, they're the ones that are going to make you look cool doing it. Nomadicresearch.com. Make sure you go check out their packs. It's coming into school season. If you need a backpack for work, if you need a backpack for school, go check out their raid packs there. They are absolutely amazing, and we'll have more links to them on the website. Guys, that's going to be it for this week. Make sure you go check out our sponsors. Make sure you go check out us, and make sure you go check out Sean at everywhere that you can find him. That's going to be it. That's Sean. I'm DJ. This has been the show. We'll catch you guys on the next one. See you later.